Ben Napier, the huge guy with the bigger smile, was the center of hometown for years. The one that everyone believed would never break. Then, however, something occurred. Abruptly, he wasn't popping up as frequently as he once did. Fans began to inquire, where is Ben? Why is he so distinct in appearance? Initially, it was simple to dismiss the rumors. Up till they weren't. Was he trying to conceal a health scare? Was his life being torn apart by fame? Worked so hard to construct? Or was it something more sinister that he wished the world would never see? Okay, the truth has finally come to light. Moreover, nobody anticipated it. After you hear, you will never view hometown the same way after learning what actually happened to Ben Napier. As you can see, everyone believed that hometown was just another sentimental program about renovating old homes. However, if you examine it more closely, it was also the point at which everything began to subtly collapse. However, to truly understand how things fell apart, let's go back to the beginning of hometown. Inside hometown, when hometown initially aired on television, no one could have predicted how large it would grow. It wasn't ostentatious. It lacked the outrageous drama that is typical of other home remodeling programs. As an alternative, hometown was anything distinct. Simple, genuine, and heartfelt, it was a welcome change. Additionally, that's precisely why viewers found it so captivating. The story takes place in the tiny Mississippi town of Laurel. Hometown encompassed more than just home renovation. Its goals were to preserve memory, restore history, and assisting a community in regaining its self-confidence. They did more than simply renovate every home they touched, the creature was revived. There were tales to be told by the drooping porches and fading paint. Additionally, Aaron Napier and her were the ideal storytellers. However, what truly set hometown apart wasn't limited to the remodeling. It was how Aaron and Ben gave you a sense of belonging. The town as well. Watching one episode was more like seeing old friends than reality TV. Happened to be exceptionally skilled with a paintbrush and a sledgehammer. There was no denying their chemistry. Aaron's artistic, creative spirit was a wonderful match for Ben's laid-back, lumberjack charm. Collectively, they built incredibly individualized and exquisitely gorgeous residences. Laurel herself rose to prominence on the show on par with the Napiers. In contrast to the busy, unlike the dramatic cities that were the subject of so many previous remodeling shows, Laurel was calm, heartfelt, and rich in history. And that was adored by the audience. The goal wasn't to sell houses for a quick buck. The goal was to construct something durable and respectful to the while keeping an eye on the future. The success of the show didn't happen right away. However, the Napiers' personal affection served as the first impetus for hometown, for their neighborhood. Before HGTV, they were already renovating dilapidated houses in the Laurel area. Knocked. It seemed almost too good to be true at first. A pair getting a national television contract. It didn't appear genuine. However, it was, and everything changed as a result. Hometown rapidly developed a following of people who weren't merely looking for design inspiration. They were because they were concerned about the people they were observing. They identified with the family's decision to establish roots in the homeowners who shed joyful tears as they entered their completed residences. In a world that occasionally seemed to be going too quickly, hometown provided something much longer, sweeter, and slower. However, as the show expanded, the demands behind the scenes. A love letter to a small community turned into a full-fledged television show. Empire. More requirements. Additional filming schedules. Higher standards. And even if everything appeared flawless not everything was as easy as it appeared, camera. And that is where the story of Ben Napier begins. Begins to go in an unexpected direction. Everything was going smoothly until Ben unexpectedly found himself in the spotlight due to a scandal that no one anticipated. The scandal that startled fans, hometown, seemed like a safe haven for a while. Good people, modest life, and small-town pride were the main themes. For this reason, when Ben Napier's name surfaced amid a huge Mississippi fraud scandal, fans were caught off guard in 2022. It seemed like the most unexpected thing anyone could have heard. One of the largest welfare scandals in 2022 was centered on the state of Mississippi. In American history. Specifically, we are discussing $70.7 million in welfare money that were intended to assist the poorest families in the state. However, the funds were diverted to rich personal favors, pet projects, and individuals. 47 defendants were involved in the affair. Includes well-known figures like former Governor Phil Bryant and NFL quarterback Brett Favre. It was public, messy, and left many feeling deceived and outraged. One noteworthy instance was the building of a volleyball stadium at Favre's alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi, where his daughter played. According to text messages, Favre asked for guarantees that the financing source would remain hidden from the public. Thousands of pages of documents and text messages were made public as investigators conducted more thorough investigations. To the general population. Individuals began going over them, searching for every detail, every connection, every name. At that point, Ben Napier's name appeared. Then, like a Christmas tree, the internet sprang alive. It was unbelievable to hometown fans. Ben Napier. The big-hearted but grounded craftsman. In what way may he be bound to anything so dubious? Overnight, speculation erupted. Social media was a flurry of activity. A few admirers concerned that everything they thought they knew about Aaron and Ben would turn out to be false. Here, however, the whole information is crucial, and it's crucial to avoid drawing hasty judgments. Although Ben Napier wasn't directly implicated, he was named in the scandal documents. In any misconduct. His relationship was, at most, tenuous. According to the texts that were made public, other people's names were mentioned, primarily in relation to communal gatherings or collaborations in Laurel. Nothing indicated that he was aware of the deception or took part in it, or gained anything from it. This is a typical instance of guilt by association. Or, perhaps more accurately, guilt by omission. When controversies such as this one become public, even if a name has nothing to do with the situation, it usually gets dragged through the mud. Shadowy aspect of the tale. And regrettably, Ben experienced precisely that. To be honest, Ben and his wife Erin didn't leap to their defense right away, which indicated a lot. They refrained from contributing to the drama. They refrained from stoking the fires. They believed the truth would finally be able to speak for itself. And it did. As the dust calmed and more digging was done, it became evident that Ben was not among the 47 defendants. There was no probe into him. He had nothing to do with the fraudulent actions that shook Mississippi. Nevertheless, it was a frightening few weeks for devoted, hometown viewers. In a world although it seems like every prominent personality has a secret flaw, Ben Napier's it was disturbing that they might be involved in a scandal. Fortunately, this was one of those infrequent occasions when the situation wasn't as dire as it had appeared. The story of Ben Napier remained unaltered. His standing for hard work, honesty, and kindness remained unwavering. If anything, the entire circumstance made supporters of him and Aaron even more defensive. It served as a reminder to everyone that in the modern world, even it is possible for decent individuals to become entangled in another person's problems without ever doing anything to merit it. Life tossed Ben another curveball just when it appeared like the storm had passed, and this time, it has nothing to do with gossip or scandals. It had to do with something far more unpleasant and intimate. The injury to his shoulder that nearly killed him initially, it was little issues. Audiences began to notice that Ben Napier wasn't acting like himself on Hometown. He would occasionally sit rather than stand. Ben would occasionally hang back a little while Aaron carried the larger items. More than normal. Although it was minor, viewers who had seen every episode for years thought it was not overlooked. On social media, rumors began to circulate. Is Ben alright? Why does he appear to be less involved? Is there a problem? Online forums were overrun with worried fans' comments. Sections. Some assumed he was simply worn out from all the filming. Others were concerned that it might be something more grave. Some even came up with extremely bizarre ideas. There was a lot of conjecture, driven by the lack of immediate response from any cast member. Then, at last, the true tale was revealed, and it was incredibly personal and tragic. Ben had been dealing with a painful shoulder problem for a long time. What began as a small irritation had developed into something considerably more severe, a bone spur that continued to pierce his shoulder joint. He persevered for months, doing improvements, making episodes, and attempting to disregard the throbbing anguish that never goes away. Ignoring it, however, did not make it go away. It only got worse. Imagine waking up after earning a reputation as the person who can construct anything with just his hands. Waking up one morning and finding that you can hardly raise your arm. That's where Ben ended up. It hurt like hell. Nights without sleep became commonplace. Little pleasures like tossing his daughter it became impossible to carry May about the house or to keep Helen in the air. It was more than simply a physical battle for a man like Ben. It emotionally tore at him. Doubts began to surface. Was he still the solid, trustworthy husband and father he desired to be? Could he still be the beloved and well-known Ben Napier from Hometown? Ben Napier, however, had surgery to fix the injury in March 2023. The choice having surgery wasn't simple. There were dangers and anxieties. But what if it failed? What if it took longer than anticipated to recover? However, Aaron was by his side the entire time, reassuring him that it was acceptable to look after himself. This wasn't about appearances or pride. He wanted to be healthy for the people he cared about. Although the actual procedure was difficult, Ben handled it the only way he knew how, directly. The rotator cuff had to be repaired, the bone spur had to be cut off, as well as removing damaged cartilage. Because Ben works in a field that mostly depends on physical, however, there were serious hazards associated with the surgery. It was anticipated that the healing process would take a while. And difficult. For several weeks, Ben had to wear a sling and go through a lot of physical treatment to restore mobility and strength. On some days, it seemed like there was no development at all. There were times when he was so frustrated that all he wanted to do was go back to swinging hammers and building cabinets. However, something amazing occurred during it all. The same supporters they came in droves to support him, anxious and speculating. Encouragement messages were abundant. Social media. People who had never met Ben in person came together in support of him from all over the nation. telling him he wasn't by himself. Ben claims that the most difficult aspect of recuperation was his incapacity to physically participate in the initiatives he enjoys. He was annoyed because he wasn't being capable of assisting with heavy lifting or performing the practical tasks that characterize his employment on Hometown. Erin, his wife, expressed her worries and that she was still concerned when Ben tried to activities that can put stress on his recovering shoulder. And Ben battled his way slowly but steadily back. The man who previously questioned whether he would ever be able to bear his daughters again ended up effortlessly lifting them. He picked up his tools and went back to woodworking with a renewed appreciation. He returned to the Hometown set, not just as the Ben people recalled Napier, but as someone who had persevered through adversity and emerged stronger. It felt good to see Ben return to the show, grinning, giggling, and creating stunning homes with Erin. Like a victory for everyone who had been supporting him, not just for him. It served as a reminder that we can all struggle, even the strongest of us. And that relying on someone is perfectly acceptable. Those that care about us when we need to recover. Ben's health issue might not have materialized in for those who know and love Hometown. It was one of the most authentic, relevant, and motivating aspects of his journey, regardless of dramatic headlines or scandalous gossip columns. While Ben and Erin persisted in giving their all to their Hometown initiatives, behind the scenes, a more significant event was taking place, a fusion of significant family occasions and lifelong memories. However, what occurs during such times, are they full of love and happiness, but also tinged with a sense of bittersweet goodbye? Family and bittersweet moments. As we go further into Ben and Erin Napier's journey, it's hard to overlook the emotional depth of their Hometown work. Contributes to their private lives. These are tales of love, family, and more than just remodeling. And the passing of time, which converge in the most surprising ways. These sweet moments are what the people who genuinely define themselves inside the walls of each home they renovate, as a pair and as individuals. One project in particular is noteworthy for more reasons than merely not because of the actual refurbishment, but rather because of the profoundly impactful changes that are taking place in their lives. Of Erin and Ben, as well as the relatives who were involved. It all began when Ben's house was renovated. Jesse, his brother, and Lauren, his wife. This was a labor of passion, not just another project. The Ben and Erin were excited to assist the newlyweds in remodeling their Laurel home. However, this is where it becomes even more unique. As the remodeling progressed, Ben and the news that Jesse's families had to share was significant. During the time of Jesse and Lauren's first pregnancy, in just a few weeks, Erin and Ben announced that they were also expecting their second child, making them cousins. Separate. The program, appropriately named Family Values, highlighted the close bonds between family members and the happiness of bringing up kids in a tight-knit neighborhood. Let's discuss the renovation. The house felt cozy thanks to the flawless fusion of Erin's style and Ben's abilities. An hospitable house that accurately captured the essence of Jesse and Lauren's personalities. From the vintage kitchen to every area of the house, including the charming nursery, portrayed a tale of love, family, and fresh starts. A few years later, in 2025, that same family-filled home is still there. Landmarks was entering a new phase. When the moment arrived, the mansion, with all of its importance and it had to be sold, history. Jesse and Lauren made the decision that it was time to relocate to a bigger home with more land, an area where they could cultivate a large garden and see their kids as they play outside. Every homeowner is all too familiar with the moment when it's time to go with a home that has carried special meaning for them. A lot of memories. And that was a challenging time for Ben and Erin. This home wasn't simply a project, it served as a real, breathing memento of some of their most joyful moments. Always the considerate one, Erin shared the poignant moment with her admirers on social media. So many play dates and family dinners. They are prepared to live in a rural area with plenty of land. To cultivate a garden and see their young as they explore the forest. I will not be able to view this one is open. I'm praying for a wonderful family that will adore it as much as we have all discovered the link in my narratives. She thought. Her post was sincere and thought-provoking. On how hard it was to give up a home that had seen so much. There was a moment of openness, as Erin conveyed the type of conflicted feelings that many of how it makes us feel to part with something that has so many sentimental meanings. Ben concurred, offering his own thoughts on the importance of the house. A lot of living has been done in that green cottage over the last 4 years, he said. Last-minute meals, new infants, family get-togethers, and Christmas. I've experienced nearly as I have as many cups of coffee in their kitchen with my mother as I do in mine. As for Ben, the house was a storehouse of treasured memories, not just a building. It's noteworthy that in the realm of hometown, every makeover signifies something different. More significant than a new floor layout or a new coat of paint. It's about family, home, and the unsaid moments that contribute to a life full of memories and love. Regarding Erin and Ben, each endeavor is an expression of their personal passion. And for Jesse, the house was the ideal illustration of how their dedication to their community and love for family permeate every aspect of their lives. However, if you believe that's where their adventure peaked, you were completely mistaken. Because it appeared as though Ben and Erin would eventually slow down, they changed the course, and believe me when I say that no one anticipated their next stunning move. The largest project to date. If you thought remodeling a single house at a time was amazing, picture entrusting a whole town to Ben, Erin, and their expanding group of professionals. The town of Sebring, Florida, would be fortunate this time to obtain the magic of Napier. However, Sebring was more than just a town in need of little improvement. It was a neighborhood that has suffered years of hurricane damage and financial hardships. Houses were left unoccupied. Companies had permanently closed their doors. The town's heart continued to beat. However, it needed a lifeline. And that's when Ben's leadership truly came into its own. This was more than a few projects dotted throughout the city. We are discussing a full-fledged metamorphosis from top to bottom. There were more than a dozen significant remodeling projects planned, impacting all facets of Sebring's communal life. From repairing houses to revitalizing historic structures, to revitalizing public areas and small enterprises, the amount of work was overwhelming. However, that is precisely the type of obstacle that allows Ben Napier to out of bed in the morning. His innate capacity to inspire teams, have huge dreams, and break down. He was the ideal guy to guide this enormous ship because he could turn lofty objectives into practical, attainable measures. The Napiers weren't working alone, of course. They were collaborating with a formidable group of stars from HGTV and Food Network. Contributed enthusiasm and knowledge that made Sebring's transformation even more thrilling. Prominent figures from around the network arrived prepared to get their hands dirty. And each new endeavor seemed like a spark being added to the flames. The hometown takeover team will refurbish the residences of important local leaders to assist ignite a surge of constructive transformation and promote community meetings in open areas. This entails restoring a local kindergarten teacher's ancient home and building a comfortable gazebo in the major park of Sebring. Erin and Ben will also contribute their design and remodeling skills. Knowledge to support a number of neighborhood establishments, such as a theater, soda shop, and Cuban cafe. However, nobody understated the magnitude of the undertaking. Rebuilding a